अस्सलाम वालेकुम ਦੋਸਤੋ, ਕੀ ਹਾਲ ਚਾਲ ਹੈ। ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਨੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦੋਸਤ ਵੀਰ ਭਰਾ ਖੈਰੀਅਤ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਣਗੇ। ਦੋਸਤੋ, ਬੈਲਜੀਅਮ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਕੈਥੋਲਿਕ ਲੜਕੀ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਨਾਸਤਿਕ ਹੈ, ਖੁਦਾ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੰਨਦੀ ਸੀ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨੇ ਜਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਮਤਾਲਿਆ ਕੀਤਾ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨੇ ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਦਾ ਮਤਾਲਿਆ ਕੀਤਾ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਰੂਹਾਨੀਅਤ ਆਉਣਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਗਈ। ਫਿਰ ਇੱਕ ਟਾਈਮ ਆਇਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੰਡੀਆ 'ਚ ਆਈ ਅਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਦਰਬਾਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਸਰ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕੁਛ ਐਸੀਆਂ ਵਾਈਬ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਮਿਲੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਦੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਨੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਕਬੂਲ ਕੀਤਾ। ਅਤੇ ਕੀ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਹੈ, ਇਸ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਕਬੂਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਛੋੜ ਗਈ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਾਲਦੈਨ, ਉਹਦੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਛੋੜ ਗਏ ਅਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤੰਗੀ ਅਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲਾਤ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹਨੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਕਬੂਲ ਕੀਤਾ। ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਇਹ ਵੀਡੀਓ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਇਹ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਦੇ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਕੁਛ ਦੋਸਤ ਕਹਿਣਗੇ ਕਿ ਯਾਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਈ। ਅਤੇ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਫੀਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਕਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲਾਤ ਉਹਨੇ ਬਰਦਾਸ਼ਤ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ। ਇਹ ਮੇਨ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਵਿਖਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਬਾਕੀ ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਏਗੀ। ਅਗਰ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਏ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਅਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਲਾਈਕ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਜਾਇਆ ਜੇ। ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਐਂਡ 'ਤੇ।
I was an atheist. I didn't want to have anything to do with religion whatsoever. That very first Kundalini Yoga class is where I heard Waheguru Mantra for the first time, and the second class a week later, Mool Mantra. That shifted everything for me. Within a short amount of time, I stopped drinking, I stopped doing drugs, I stopped smoking, I went vegetarian. Those were big changes for someone like me. My first time going into a Gurudwara Sahib was in a Sri Harmandir Sahib.
Wow.
I'd never been to a Gurudwara Sahib. I'd never seen a Sikh up until this point. I walked down the steps and I put my head on the parikrama and I cried for 2 days and 2 nights. I couldn't stop crying. It felt like someone had given me some pani to drink and I didn't even know how thirsty I was. It's like my skin didn't exist anymore and I just melted into something, but I had a whole lot of questions. There was an old Uncle Chi that came up to me. It was saying that it was written on my forehead that I was a Sikh of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Talk about freaking someone out. For me, it never felt like I've chosen Sikhi or I've even found Sikhi. I wasn't looking for anything. Maharaj just grabbed me by the scruff of my neck. When I went to visit my parents with a turban, they thought I'd become an extremist Muslim and they was like, you're not welcome like this, so either take that thing of your head, they said, or you're not welcome. I was like, okay, then we go back home. My friends thought I'd joined a cult. There was an intervention at work because no one knows who Sikhs are, what Sikhi is, but it was so alien for them. I was at the top of my field. I led a network of 600 people who were much, much older than me, of professors that I was at the head of, and I walked away from the whole thing. You're walking away from a really good job that people would do anything for. You're walking away from a comfortable country, which is true. It was much easier in Belgium. You're walking away from the life you've built, all your friends. Why? For anyone committed to Sikhi, there's been a whole lot of things that you have to do that you don't like. As you're working through things, it's hard work. You have to face so much that if you'd be choosing the things you'd like, you'd have walked away a million times. Realizing I can't do it without Guru Sahib, I stand no chance. And I come in utter despair and humility of I stand no chance doing this without you. So just tell me what to do and I'll do it. What happened with my family relationship? They officially fully disowned me. I'm completely not their daughter anymore. Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj became all those relationships with me. That was so much kirpa. I didn't have a relationship with a mother, with a father, with any siblings, with any grandparents. Maharaj became all of those relationships. That's where you're starting to build personal relationship with Guru Sahib, and that's where that love takes on all those forms. I really liked it. I really like the camp, but I like camping. So
what is this camp you're talking about? You're talking about camp and camping.
It was a Malaysian camp in Sri Harmandir Sahib Academy, and it was in Scotland. They've been doing it since every year.
Yeah, it's in the
different islands in Scotland.
Island Bull. And you say, mosquitoes in Punjab. There are some, what are they called? No, some midges.
I've seen them. They're
boy,
midges.
in Markahan, they killed us. They destroyed us. They're just everywhere biting us. And it was all like intense. So it was literally intense camping. It's a very good camp, and the things in the Guru Granth Sahib Academy Seva tried their very best and made this very positive camp. But it was, like communal showers.
We didn't have communal showers.
So the worst of the vlogs, and I'd wake up really early to go to a different shower because I just found it really weird having a communal open showers. I was like, I'm not that type of person.
I think most of us.
Not saying that as a camp art.
For a lot of people, it was a first time camping, I think.
Yeah.
And I think a good few people ended up sleeping like in the langar hole because it was too wet or too cold in it. And
I think my father was a kid with us. He slept in his car. He couldn't get a hotel with them. Now get his whole good digits on gear. But we've done camping before, and I don't mind it. I enjoyed it. But I think that was just cold, wet, and it was just windy, and it was just at times miserable. They did a great job, by the way. But yeah. So that was all. How was that? 10 years ago, Benj, I think.
Yeah, that must have been because I got married September of that same year.
Oh,
Sorry, November of that same year we got married.
2015. I want to say, or 14.
Yes, 2015.
Yeah, that makes
Sorry,
sense.
I'm looking because my husband is sitting
My
there.
wife would kill me if I forgot my wedding day. And I did actually. She told me.
We have both forgotten even a phone call with like the government about something like marriage allowance, and they asked us, "What's your wedding date?" And neither of us knew. It's like, let me get the paperwork out. So we're good.
And if Bardi is there, it would be great if Bardi joined us, but we respect her. Bardi wants to stay on the other side of the camera. So Benj, tell us about yourself. So who are you?
Who am I? Japjeet Kaur, living in Leicester. Have been there almost since I got to England, which is the end of 2011. I moved to England. I spent 6 months in Coventry, and then I moved to Leicester. I'm originally from Belgium, and I moved to the UK because of Sikhi. As in Belgium, it wasn't very straightforward being a Sikh and living there for various reasons.
Coventry?
Yeah, exactly.
not
That's why it was
London.
only 6 months.
Yeah.
Exactly that reason.
No offense to anyone from Coventry. I'm very patriotic about where I'm from in that sense. And I don't miss an opportunity to tell everyone where I'm from.
Slough.
From Slough. It's a beautiful part of the country.
I did like Southall. I lived here for about a month or 6 weeks, and I was like, no, I can't do this. So that was a trial out. I was like, no, I'll let me head up a bit up north.
I appreciate that. Southall is a difficult place to survive
that was
for
it.
anyone. The bugs struggle here sometimes.
This podcast is brought to you from Southall as well.
But so what was your life like before kind of joining Sikhi or coming across the Sikh community? What were you doing before, and where were you?
I was in Belgium. I was at the point where I came into Sikhi, I was working at university. I'd done my PhD. I was doing a postdoctoral degree at Leuven University, and I was living let's say, a pretty standard Western life. At that point, no spirituality in my life. As I was coming into Sikhi, there was, as in I was really religious, let's say, Catholic when I was a kid growing up, but not at the point where I found Sikhi, or where Guru Sahib pulled me. Completely on the contrary, very much a workaholic, using drugs, drinking, smoking. And that wasn't even weird amongst my colleagues. I was from the literature department.
Yeah.
It wasn't weird to be doing drugs if you worked at the literature department.
And you mentioned about being from a Catholic family as well. You used to go to the church as well. I remember you saying in a previous podcast that you still had that connection to something more.
So I grew up, my grandparents on both sides were pretty Catholic.
Yeah.
My parents not. They had actually, I don't know how you would phrase it in English, but signed themselves out of the register, basically. So very much not practicing. But we grew up in a very small village. And to kind of keep the peace in the village, there were two schools. There was a Catholic school and there was a state school. And this is quite common in Belgium because you'd have the two systems operating parallelly. I have no idea if it works like this here.
We have Church of England schools, Catholic schools, and
and
state schools. It's a similar idea.
And so the Catholic school was typically a girls' school, as in there were very few boys. I think the year where I was in, that was the first 2 boys entering that school. Okay. So I was sent there, and then my brother was sent to the state school, which was traditionally the boys' school. And so that kept the peace in the village with everyone. One kid in one school, one kid in the other. Everyone is happy. And I guess it's just because the Catholic school happened to be a girls' school that I ended up there. It wasn't from anything other reason for that. But I very much remember when I was growing up, the memories I have of my first years, let's say till 6, 7, I'd be talking to God in myself or out loud. I'd be singing what I'd now think of as praises, as is kirtan, but like not Gurbani kirtan, but just like
hymns and stuff.
it would be really like a common thing for me. I know that I had my grandma's rosary, which was passed down to me, and I was like that kid. You might have seen it if you didn't grow up Catholic, of course, like, but seen it in the movies, like sitting with your hands folded at the side of the bed, and I'd be doing my rosary, and I'd be the only one in my family. My brother, not like that. My parents, not like that at all. But in that sense, there was a kirpa that I went to a school where religion was part of it. I went to church, also as the only one of kind of my own family, but my grandparents would take me, or I'd go by myself, and we'd go with the school. And it was to the point that I very much remember my mom saying many times, she's going to become a nun. As in, I'd be like proper
Faithful.
committed.
Yeah.
And it was something that I considered, actually. As in, I didn't consider myself having a family. I considered myself entering a nunnery. It sounds weird talking about that now, because it feels like many lifetimes ago, like not even part of this one. And I was drawn mostly to the mystic element within Catholicism. So just as we would know, I guess as Sikhs, like the mystic element in Islam, like as Sufis, there is a mystic counterpart in Catholicism. And I was really intrigued. And it's not far off of what you could think of as buckets, as in it's that same longing to become one with the divine. If you'd look at those writings of those mystics who had achieved that oneness, it's very similar to reading Bhagavad Bani. And so I was very intrigued. I was very pulled. And then in my early teens, in a very short space of time, a very close person in our family passed away, and a very close friend of mine passed, who was the same age as me. And I started asking questions about death, and I didn't get answers that satisfied me, as in none of what was said seemed to make any sense for me. And that's where I entirely lost my faith.
Any examples of what they were saying to you that didn't sit well or made sense?
It was just a black and white as, well, they'll be gone to heaven or hell now, which just didn't resonate with me as that's what happens, or that's what happens ultimately. There was a lot of not knowing at all.
Yeah.
As in, it wasn't part of the conversation, and you'd be difficult when you'd ask. There was a lot of avoiding the question. There was a lot of, we don't speak about that. This isn't part of our lived reality. It was very confusing. And for me, from that moment onwards, religion didn't make sense. And growing up in a small village, there weren't any other options of faiths to even enter your world. As in, it wasn't like, oh, there were a couple of Muslim families or Sikh families, or like nothing at all. It was purely white and Catholic. In other European countries, you'd even within Christianity have a couple of options. It was Catholic, and that's it. And so I lost my faith entirely and became very skeptical. Strangely enough, when I then went to uni, I studied literature. And one of the topics I kept going back to would be exactly the mystics, also within Dutch literature, French literature. And so I would study their writings more like from a academic perspective, but I kept being pulled, and I kept finding myself in the theology library. And even though it wasn't driven from the same point, it did mean I kept coming across writings about that ecstasy of divine union. And then it was during my uni years, when I was doing my PhD, or maybe even when I was still a student, I used to get horrible migraines already from a young age. And I started going to a yoga class, a hatha yoga class. I think I was a student at uni at this point. But I was drinking, smoking, doing drugs. It wasn't doing much for me, but it was to try and help my body a bit and try and help my migraines. Then, while I was doing my PhD, or just after, it might have been in my postdoctoral years already. Yeah, postdoctoral years already. So after I finished my PhD, a yoga class was started in our department during a lunch break, and that was from someone teaching Kundalini Yoga, someone from the 3HO community. not a Sikh herself at all, not within the whole 3HO lifestyle ultimately. But I started going to that class because my migraines were so bad that I was struggling to even finish my research. And in the first class, Waheguru Mantra was put on as a recording, I think.
Would you say that was your? And I'm fascinated by this idea you grew up with. There's no Sikhs or Muslims or other people, other religions, even denominations of Christianity around. So when was, before we kind of go back to yoga, when was the first time you saw a Sikh? Was that?
That was even after that. I've
Wow,
not seen a Sikh
okay.
ever in my life, because Sikhs in Belgium, especially at that time, so we're talking now about, 15 years ago or so, they were very much only in a few towns, Sint-Truiden being one of them. I'd never seen a Sikh in my life.
Wow.
Not on TV either.
Yeah.
That wasn't
But
present.
diversity wasn't a thing there in that
Not
sense.
at all. And like even like in my university years, I lived in a bit of a bigger city like Leuven. There were no Sikhs around at all, and you'd find the odd Muslim, and that was about it. And so other people, I guess, who were consciously looking for spirituality would end up going to Buddhist communities or the Hare Krishna community, which is fairly big in Belgium, as in they have a big grounds, and so people would go to Hare Krishna events. Sikhs, you wouldn't hear of them. And it wasn't, of course, something that was kind of nurtured in my upbringing either, to look into anything, as in, yes, I went to Catholic school and I went to a Catholic secondary school as well. It was a Catholic university, but that doesn't mean really anything at university anymore. But like, where in a good Sikh family, if you see your child being so committed and like in conversation with Waheguru, you nurture that, I would assume. And my parents just tried to like, please no.
We've left this, so you're bringing it back.
Yeah,
again,
my
like,
reason for going to a secondary Catholic school wasn't that was a Catholic school. That was the best school that we could find. So that's where I ended up. And my brother ended up there as well, even though he went to... It was just about the best school, and whatever denomination was behind it wasn't really important. But so yeah, that very first Kundalini Yoga class is where I heard Waheguru Mantra for the first time. And the second class a week later, Mool Mantra.
Was that your...
Yeah, hair standing on end on my arms, because that shifted everything for me in my life, to the point that it impacted me so much that I stopped going after 6 weeks, because I was very cushy with my life as it was, and the yoga wasn't really impacting me to that extent. I just went literally to help with my migraines and my back pain, but I had Waheguru Mantra and Guru Mantra, Guru Mantra and Mool Mantra going in my head all the time, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and just be reciting Mool Mantra, and I was like, I didn't know what it was. I went and Googled, and all I could find at that point was Mool Mantra from Hindu tradition. So there was absolutely no awareness about Sikhs. At that point, if you would walk around in Belgium and you'd come across a turban, that would be a Muslim thing. It wasn't even associated with Sikhi. If you open up a dictionary in Belgium, I haven't done so in the past 10 years, but look up turban in Dutch, and it'll say headgear for Muslims. So there's no awareness of Sikhs whatsoever.
So your first interaction wasn't even
It wasn't an interaction with
individual
Sikhs.
or book. It was literally just by hearing.
It was just by, yeah.
It kind of, Sonia Dugbaba, Sonia Hardho Vesagalho, the thing that's so far from us, just by listening, impacts and changes us, and that's fascinating. So just by hearing Vaheguru the first time in that lesson, then Mool Mantra the following week.
And it was, I think those yoga classes, like people who know me know that I'm quite far away from the 3HO community. If you want to insult me, ask me if I'm a 3HO Sikh, which I got a lot at the initial Sikh camps here in the UK after I've moved.
So you're not part of it?
Well,
Just
but because part of their sadhana is to read Japji Sahib in the morning, I got introduced to reading Japji Sahib or listening to Japji Sahib. And so this was shifting things at such a rapid extent. But mind, I was a atheist. I didn't want to have anything. This was such an internal struggle. I didn't want to have anything to do with religion whatsoever. And yet there was this pull, and it was very uncomfortable. And I could feel that things were shifting. Within a short amount of time, I stopped drinking. I stopped doing drugs. I stopped smoking. I went vegetarian. Those were big changes for someone like me.
Was there ever a moment where you tried fighting against these
Oh
changes?
yeah, that's
Like,
what's me not going after the first 6 weeks. Like, I don't like any of this. What's happening? And then I think a month later or something, I turned back to that class. Obviously, I had no other place to turn to either, right? That class was the only kind of portal. I'm back to that class, and then I started asking questions, but she barely knew anything herself as a teacher. I was like, okay, so I'm gonna have to go to India. So I booked tickets nearly a year in advance to go to India on a trip, on a holiday, and I ended up going to Punjab. I landed in Delhi, took a train straight to Amritsar Sahib.
you saw a Sikh then, right?
Yeah.
You definitely.
My first time going into a Gurudwara Sahib was in a Sri Harmandir Sahib.
Wow.
I'd never been to a Gurudwara Sahib. I'd never really seen a Sikh. I'd never seen a Sikh up until this point, until I arrived in Punjab. That was my absolute first introduction.
So it's from listening to Vaheguru, the literal word Vaheguru, Mool Mantar, then you went on this journey of learning internet research, doing Japji Sahib in the morning, having never actually met another. And so just think of all those people out there just like finding Sikhi, literally, in all these weird...
I didn't know what I was finding.
Not even looking, like you found not even trying to
No,
look for it.
I was definitely the person who was not looking.
Yeah.
I was really skeptical. I was really, really skeptical. I didn't want to have anything to do with religion.
It's interesting, because that point about the first thing that you heard was Vaheguru Mantar. It kind of reminds you of like our first Guru Sahiban, that they were like Guru Angad Dev Ji, Palena Ji, they first had the Shabad.
Yeah.
Or Guru Amar Das Ji, they first had the Shabad. And it's just interesting in that respect that your first interaction was with the Shabad rather than individuals, if you know what I mean, coming into Sikhi. So I thought that was quite unique and quite interesting as well. Think about it.
And the trajectory of when you try fighting it, and like, I don't want to go down this path, but you still end up, there's no way of fighting if it's in your Kadam, if it's in your desk, there's no way of fighting back against it.
Yeah, because I didn't go to Harmandir Sahib with the idea of I'm going to become a Sikh. And I just wanted to understand a bit more and travel and go to India for the first time.
Be a tourist,
There you go. But I arrived there on the eve of Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Gurupurab.
Wow.
Talk about having good karma. And so my first time coming to a Gurudwara Sahib was in Amritsar Sahib in Harmandir Sahib. That was profound, and we ended up staying for a week because this was also how the dates fell right then was that the next day, the day after Gurupurab, if I've got the dates exactly correct, everything shut down because it was the commemoration also of the November genocides. So we were stuck for a week. I didn't mind being stuck for a week, but a lot happened on that trip. I was getting a little bit okay with the God idea, but maybe I should say, like, up until this point, if in the yoga classes I was still going to, if the word God was said, I was very uncomfortable with that. I wasn't going to a yoga class for God. I was going for my back and for my migraine. So keep that stuff away from me. I've been there and I've walked away from that. There's no answers there, was my thinking, right? Let alone reincarnation. Like, sorry, I was a scientist.
I
was a doctor.
Doctor, PhD.
No.
Yeah.
And then what happened in Harmandir Sahib, that was so profound. I walked down the steps and I put my head on the parikrama and I cried for 2 days and 2 nights. I couldn't stop crying. And it felt, I've said this in the podcast with Kamalpreet Singh as well, and I've said it in private conversations. It felt like someone had given me some pani to drink, and I didn't even know how thirsty I was, like how parched I was. And I absolutely it's like my skin didn't exist anymore, and I just melted into something, but I had a whole lot of questions at the same time, and it was very blessed and really uncomfortable and something I wanted to run away from at the same time as never leave again. There was a lot of conflict inside at that point. And it was very profound. We stayed for a week. When I walked out, and so this was in the evening, Rasa was being recited, and that stirred so deeply inside. But when we then left the complex, this is before all the renovations that have recently happened, so you'd still have all the shops really crowded nearby. There was an old Uncle T that came up to me, and he started speaking in Punjabi. Didn't understand anything he was saying. But then his son came to translate, and the son said that his father was saying that it was written on my forehead that I was a Sikh of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Talk about freaking someone out. But the Uncle G went into his shop and he sold books on Sikhi, and he found every English book that he could take from his shelves and just sold me a whole pile of books, a backpack completely full, and that was my literature for that month. And he also gave me my first kara, which was really interesting. Sorry?
For free, or did he sell it to you?
I can't remember.
Punjabi
I know that the books I had to pay for the kara, I don't know if he included it in the price or not.
He bought you the price.
But it was very interesting because, and I don't have them, I was going to bring them with me, I forgot them. But from the moment I was born, my grandfather gave a bracelet to my parents to put on me from the day I was born, which was he called it a slave bracelet. It was a silver bracelet, just pure round, just like a kara. And I've never come across anyone who had one. So it wasn't a common thing in Belgium. It wasn't a common thing for Catholics. But he gave clear instructions. It should never leave her body. She needs to keep it on at all times. And I remember he would give me a new one if I outgrew it. And I had a couple of surgeries as a kid, and there would be like where they had to cut it through then to be under general anesthetic. And there would be a new one waiting for me. So there in Amritsar Sahib, I took off that slave bracelet and put on the kara. But it was strange because I'd always had one on me, weirdly enough.
And the slave bracelets, I mean, what color is it? Is it?
It's just a silver,
Metal.
like no decoration, just round, just like a kara,
Oh, wow.
but in silver.
What does it represent?
It was seen as your handcuff to God. That's how my grandfather explained it to me. And he passed before I came into Sikhi, so I've never been able to ask him, because I wanted to ask him, like, who told you this? Where did this come from?
I wonder if he had an interaction with a Sikh or
Yeah,
some
exactly.
sort of where someone told him that, and he was fascinated by the
Very
concept.
strange.
I wanted to keep his grandkids on a straight line or a straight
Very
path.
strange, because none of the other grandkids were given it, which is the other weird thing.
So you're the chosen one for many people.
I'm so curious about what happened prior to him giving that. My parents don't know. As in, I've actually not asked them because we don't communicate. But they never told me anything about it, other than your grandfather said you have to have it.
Well, it's interesting because with the kara, we also refer to as a hat kari as well, like being handcuffs.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
translation. And it brings me to a question that I spoke about offline, which is this is called finding Sikhi. But it seems like you didn't find the Sikhi later on in your life. It's like it was always there from the start.
In that conversation that we just had, and I've said it before, it feels like there was karam that I had to work out in ways that could only be in the family that I grew up in and in the country that I grew up in. That was just how that karam needed to play out. But as if, and this is in hindsight, of course, right? But that kara played a big role in that, as if Guru Sahib had already somehow given, like, I'm going to give you an insignia. You're already mine, but I'll come and claim you later on. Because for me, it never felt like I've chosen Sikhi, or I've even found Sikhi. It happened in I wasn't looking for anything. Maharaj, especially in Harmandir Sahib, they just grabbed me by the scruff of my neck. I had no choice in the matter. If it was out of choice, I don't know if I'd be sitting here. As in, I had no choice in the matter. It just unfolded in the craziest ways almost. And even that, like with the name that my parents gave me, there's a weird story around the name giving as well, but I was given the name Nela, which is very close to Nila.
Yeah.
Again, hindsight can make things strange. Things, of course, right? But for me, it really feels as a Maharaj kind of already like, don't worry, I'll come and collect you later on. With these things, you'll get to the point of where I'll come for you, if that makes any sense.
It's almost like we're saying finding Sikhi is about how the Guru finds people. It's almost how the Guru Sahib pulls people out from a life which is so far removed from Bugga and Dastara and beads and turbans and Kripana, but the way he pulls us out and then lifts us and brings us into his fold, into his embrace. So what would you say? So up to this point, when did you start thinking that I need to become a Sikh, or I need to take on the Guru and sacrifice my mind, body and soul towards Guru?
Right there and then almost, as in those first days in Harmandir Sahib, and the person I was traveling with was my best friend, and he said, "You've come home," which is really interesting because he was searching his entire life, and he was at that point searching in Buddhist traditions. And as we were traveling together, the plan was to also go to Nepal and like help him on his search, and it ended up being pretty much all about Sikhi. He's like, you don't know how blessed you are. You've not had to look. It's just, you've just been placed where you need to be. He said, don't give that up. For anything that happens now, don't give this up. And as I was then reading in the next days, and so we ended up being a week in Amritsar Sahib, then we went to, we traveled around, we ended up in the Dawalsar Sahib. So beautiful that we ended up there for a week, because not many people actually get to go there, and Guru Gobind Singh Ji themselves was there. But so I'm reading a lot, and while we're in the Dawalsar Sahib, I'm like, I want to take Amrit. I had no idea what that entailed ultimately. But I want to go to Anandpur Sahib and I want to take Amrit. That was what I got from the books I was reading. And so we ended
Are
up...
these the books that you just got from Amritsar 5 and you've just read those? And
Yeah,
then...
there was a lot of bus traveling because we were traveling in the north, like not just in Punjab, but really like go up in Himachal Pradesh. And so I'm reading loads. And so we take the toy train to Chandigarh. I find out that there is a bus going from Chandigarh to Anandpur Sahib. So I end up at the bus station.
Are you alone now, or you?
No, this is with my friend.
Okay.
We're at the bus station, where I've eaten a pilau that's put me off of ever eating pilau again. It's so spicy. And I'm sitting on that bus,
Stomach okay?
not knowing what I'm about to do, and the bus doesn't go. The bus never left. That was Guru Sahib's like, whoa, this is not the pace that we're going to go at. You have no idea what you're doing at this point. But so that seed was really planted, as in that was all I wanted. And I know that there is a video of Baba Hari Singh Ji, like a snippet that's gone around that, where Baba Hari Singh has kind of misunderstood how we explained the journey, and where they said that I immediately took Amrit in Sri Takat Sahib. That isn't how it happened. Yeah. But the Icha was there. I really wanted to take Amrit, but I wanted to do it in Anandpur Sahib. Anyway, that didn't happen. I come back home after 6 weeks and I start wearing a dastard and I start freaking out a whole lot of people around me.
So at this point, you've kind of formally said, I want to be a Sikh.
Yeah.
You've, this is your path. I've been found, or found Sikhi, but you haven't taken Amrit.
I've not taken Amrit. I have no Sangat. I start practicing Sikhi. Okay. I start keeping my case. I start wearing a dastard. I start doing my banya. I've got no Sangat around me.
Yeah.
I start showing up at university in a dastard. Not really okay, but Maharaj covered me entirely, because in the first conversations I had with the first people, there was a misunderstanding and they thought I had cancer. Yeah. Because the word Sikh and Sikh, just like in English, is very similar in Dutch. And so they misunderstood, and for a year, nearly a year, I flew under the radar.
So you said to them, you're sick.
And they understood that I'm Sikh, and why would you cover your head if you're ill? Yeah. It's going to be if you have cancer.
Oh.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So Maharaj discovered for that.
You should take some time off, Benji, to be fair.
Sorry?
You're taking some sick leave off as well.
Well, this is how then ultimately it came out, because one of my professors then said, you look extremely well to be so sick. And I'm like, what? And that's where the whole confusion kind of got cleared up. And that's then where also the issues really started, because from that moment
did you know yourself that they'd mixed up?
I had no idea.
Oh, you had no idea.
For a year, wow. I had, or however many months, close to a year, I had no idea until that conversation where, you've all been thinking I had cancer all this time. Oh, okay.
And Benji, when you came back from India, how did your relationship change with the word God? Or was this now your relationship with the Guru going? Because this is a big thing that you spoke about offline, that, about the connection with Guru Sahib Ji. And it's quite nice because obviously we're so blessed if we have Sangat, and it's really hard if you don't have Sangat. But you've, in this story so far, Saza, you had a direct relationship, Sangat, with the Guru.
Yeah.
So how did that relationship grow in that time with Guru Sahib Ji, or God, how you want to say it?
I think from the experiences in Amritsar Sahib, I started being okay with the whole word God and with reincarnation. As in, Maharaj just took all doubt away. Like I can't even put any words to that. Like my whole reality shifted really quickly. And I think I just rolled with the punches at that point. I wasn't questioning anything that was happening. I don't even know how to say this. Like, for example, when I went to visit my parents with a turban, that was a big thing because they thought I'd become an extremist Muslim. That was their own like their only
Head covering reason.
why would you? And they was like, you're not welcome like this. So either take that thing of your head, they said, or you're not welcome. It's like, okay, then we go back home.
Was that your last interaction with family?
It wasn't the last interaction, but after that it was extremely difficult, and we're at a point where I've been completely disowned, so I have no interaction as such. And it was very difficult for a decade, with many years of nothing. But there was kind of no question in my mind. Somehow Maharaj has just, all the questions that I had and all the skepticism, it just was pulled out of me. I don't know if that was from drinking the Amrit from the Sarovar in Harmandir Sahib. I don't know how that happened, but it was just eradicated. And there was a lot going on with friends, with colleagues, as in because no one knows who Sikhs are, what Sikhi is. My friends thought I'd joined a cult. There was an intervention at work because there was the assumption that I joined a cult, so there was an intervention. And for me, there was this weird switch of, but you're a scientist and you're so narrow-minded. Well, 2 months before, I was the exact same. Don't talk to me about God, narrow-mindedness. And all of that instantly left. So it wasn't a process, and it wasn't through any of my doing. Mara just removed a veil there. From that point, I first started going into Sangat in Belgium, in Sint-Truiden, to the Gurdwara Sahib a few times. No, actually, not even at that point. I came to a Sikh retreat in the UK first, 2010.
Okay.
And
that was your first major interaction?
That was my major interaction with Punjabis and with Sikhs, because obviously in India, I didn't have interactions really with anyone. And so through Maharaj Kripa, I ended up coming through a friend of mine. She said, come with me. She was, I don't know if I should say it in that way, but it felt like she was exploring Sikhi as an option, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just kind of seeing what's going on
Dipping
here.
her toes in, and she didn't stay. But so that was my first full-on interaction for a week with Punjabi Sikhs. I was meant to be preparing for a job interview to become a full professor at Antwerp, University in Antwerp. And instead I came to the retreat, and I thought, I'll take some time out to prepare. Yeah, that didn't happen, and I wasn't interested in the interview afterwards anymore. Because after that week I decided, this is what my life is going to be. And then again, Maharaj just created circumstances. I went a few times to one of the Gurdwara Sahibs in Belgium, in Sint-Truiden, which wasn't too far from where I lived. It was the next city. But the Sangat there, it was hard to converse about the questions I had because they came from such a different perspective. People there were very much trying to build a life, settle, as in they'd all come after 84. They hadn't been around for a couple of generations. They'd been fairly new and trying to kind of find their feet economically, kids in school. My questions were about entirely different. My reality was entirely different. Mm-hmm. And that's where at the retreat, for example, the one that I went to then, that resonated a lot more of what people there were looking
similar
for.
Backgrounds,
exactly.
All in the Western world,
yes.
Speak English fluently, etc.
And so I started traveling to London every week. Good thing about working at university, because you're doing your, especially in the area where I was working in, you're doing your research in the library, or I'd be doing conferences. So I was barely ever at the office anyway. That wasn't, you could work from home or from any library. So I would leave on Thursday or Friday, come to Southall, stay here for the weekend, go back to Belgium on the Monday or Tuesday.
What year are we talking about that, Ben?
So this is 2010, 2011.
Space of Sikhi Katha, that started then?
No, not yet.
No,
that wasn't even at that point. Jagraj Singh, in that time, started doing his kathas. Yeah. But I'd started coming before that time, so there wasn't even English kathas. I was just literally Gurdwara Sahib, hopping, going from Kirtan to Kirtan to Kirtan to Kirtan to Kirtan, and sing Sangat. Wow. And so there was me traveling a whole lot. And that was solidifying this idea of, I can't imagine or envision a different life, but am I moving? That wasn't really clear either. And the way that Guru Sahib created it is just at the time where at my university they started catching on what was going on, as in with the turban, I mean. I got a offer from Penn University in Philadelphia for a academic chair for 6 months, so I could move there for 6 months, which I then did. And that's where I got the opportunity to actually live a daily life in Sangat, as in afterward, go to the Gurdwara Sahib, live in the Sangat there. And those 6 months really solidified it for me. It's like, I'm not going back to Belgium because I can't live there. Also, at the same time, in Belgium, new laws were passed, kind of following on from what was happening in France at the time, that you couldn't wear any religious symbols. So at that point, when I came back from Philadelphia after 6 months, there was a big question: do I go back to university here, continue my job? But then at that time, there was a clear choice. You can only do that if you no longer wear the star, because that's...
Someone actually said that to you, or was it implied?
Yeah.
Literally, those words were said.
Yeah, those words were said.
Really can take you serious.
And I then went to, kind of like sign on at the job center type of thing. And they said, you're not going to find a job like this, as in that's illegal now in Belgium. And that helped to make the decisions like, okay, I'll leave the country then. And so I had the choice. You're going to laugh so much. I had the choice of going to New York, because I had the offer of starting a yoga studio there, or coming to Coventry. Guess what I chose?
Coventry.
Wow.
Yeah. I think largely because I wanted to keep the option open if this doesn't work out.
Yeah.
As in, this is my ego thinking, like that was any of my choice, right? But my thinking around it is, if it doesn't work out, I'm not too far from Belgium. I can go back and
Just
revisit
train right
this.
away kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maharaj, it was just written that I had to be a Coventry, obviously, and then I ended up in Leicester, and I liked Leicester, and I'm still there. So
Right.
it was.
Crossed over.
I'm where I need to be. Yeah. That's a very long answer to that very first question, isn't it?
No, it was great. Thank you so much. And I think there's a few questions that we have written down, but I think you've already answered them. So, like, there's one about the specific moment or experience that led you to decide to embrace Sikhi. To me, from what I've heard, but please correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like as soon as you had Vaheguru, like your journey started from that moment.
Yeah, and then especially just the experience in Harmandir Sahib of just melting into that. And I think very much because that was an experience that I had been reading up, like as a kid when I was reading mystical literature from Catholic tradition. That was what intrigued me, what pulled me, what drove me, even when I'd left Catholicism altogether and become an atheist, but I'd still had that being intrigued enough to study within my academic studies, to study mystic literature. It hadn't left me entirely, and I think that experience was so powerful.
And just thinking a little bit about, and it's not here to bash Catholicism or anything, but the questions you had, were they answered by Sikhi?
Yeah, and immediately in that first retreat that I went to, and like the retreat doesn't exist anymore, but it wasn't one of the the regular camps. It was Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj wasn't there at the retreat, but all the talks were exactly about the questions I'd had. There we go. Okay, my questions are being answered here. So that started solidifying. This is my place to be. But it wasn't like, let me try this out because I've been trying out other things. I know lots of people like, oh, I've tried out this, I've tried out that. Oh, okay, now I'm getting answers in Sikhi that I didn't get elsewhere. Yes, to a certain extent, but it was already decided at that point for me.
But even there's people trying out. I think this is where the idea of Gadam comes, and Karma comes from in an English way. It comes is some people's Gadam is written, and no matter where you are in a part of the world or wherever you can be, whether it's up, Sikh, around, Punjabis aren't or not, you'll be found, and the Guru will find you and bring you closer to himself, rather than you trying something out and let's see if it works for me.
And the fact that Bhai Sahib, the bookshop keeper, said it in those clear words, of course, was a big catalyst, I think, in it as well. As in, it was just so clearly spelled out.
I was just going to ask you, Benji, just going back to going to Darbar Sahib, just when I used to live abroad, there was a guy I met, an uncle, and he's a proper Khan Bean in that sense. He was a typical Punjabi drinker. He lived in Brunei, drinker, big kind of big guy as well, to be fair. So you could take a fair. And he went back to Punjab and did his thing in Punjab. He came back, had a little business in Brunei. And all he goes, I went to Darbasa before going onto the airplane. I did Matha Tekya. I left, and then as he was flying out, he saw the name of the airport. Guru Ramdas said, whoever the name of the airport is. And he goes, just by seeing the name of Guru Ramdas, he would, on that flight, done Guru Ramdas, all the way back. Came to Brunei, never cut his hair, stopped booze, stopped drinking, changes the whole life around. And when it was Guru Ramdas's Guru Purab in Brunei, he would open it. These people were living, first generation of Sikh to be in Brunei. There's only 200 of us in the country. And he'd open his whole house, which he had on rent, but to say to other people who were renting other rooms, let me have your room for 2 days, your space, and your divan at home. You think just by seeing Guru Ramdas's name, and having no understanding of Sikhi himself. He didn't have a background understanding, but just by seeing Guru Ramdas's name, doing darshan of Guru Ramdas and Matha Tek in Harmandir Sahib, it changed his life, and a similar experience on your side as well. So once you were in Leicester, Benji, then how did you navigate Sikhi and yourself and the community? And so you're exposed to more Punjabis now, more Punjabi Sikh who are majority of the Sikh community.
Yeah. So I ended up being blessed with Amrit. I didn't have to sit with that itcha for luckily too much longer anymore. But yeah, so I got blessed in Soho Road, Gurdwara Sahib, with Amrit on Vaisakhi 2012. And so when I moved to Leicester, I was recently Amritdhari. Even the choice, as if there is any, because it's already written where we're going to take our meals, but of the house where I ended up and where I'm still living, how it was rationalized. I was doing a house share with someone. To get to the house, you had to pass, I don't know if you're familiar with Leicester, but there's a roundabout with 2 Nishan Sahibs.
Yes, yeah.
Near Guru Nanak Gurdwara Sahib. Yeah. Well, we live just behind there. So even like now it's built up, but from the house, we could see the Nishan Sahibs. And just passing the Nishan Sahibs, that was like, yeah, this house, because I'll have to pass the Nishan Sahibs every day. That's just fantastic. And it's on the roundabout, so everyone is doing Parikrama of the Nishan Sahib. So it was, and I'm still in that house, it was just, it was laid out in a way. Everything in that journey was just laid out. So been there for a long time now, since 2012. I had, of course, left my entire academic career, so my whole job and my family when I moved here. I didn't really know what to do with work. I ended up starting teaching yoga first. And then I became a holistic therapist.
And that's what you practice now for most.
Yeah, so I'm a holistic therapist, I'm a nutritionist, I'm a doula, I teach massage, I train people in certain massages. Yeah, that's what I do. And that's been all the while. As in, I didn't go back to any academic career.
Yeah.
In terms of where you were then, Benji, in Belgium, to now you've ended up in Leicester, from, in one respect, being abandoned by family, you could say, your country, your job, everything's kind of been uprooted, what you were before, to where you've come in Leicester, the hardship that you felt. How did you feel going through that? Did you feel like it was, because the way you're explaining it to us right now, when I listen to your podcast, it seems like it was like it didn't really affect you.
It did.
Yeah.
But
how did you
it was somehow like I had this, I don't know how to, the only image I have for it is that there was this inner compass just saying you need to just keep walking this way. You just need to keep walking this way. And it was also as if there was no choice in the matter anyway. But it wasn't easy, as in, even in the years at university when I was starting to wear the start, I lost all my friends. I lost my family. I was literally forbidden to have any contact with any other family members, like by my parents. I have not spoken to my brother other than a text for happy birthday, for example, for 15 years. So I'd literally lost everything and everyone.
How did you get through that, Benji? Because it's not easy, losing your family.
Yeah, initially I would still send, for example, emails to my mum. Like my dad had a really hard time with it, so not really to him, but to my mum. But it was so alien for them. One, they didn't know anything about Sikhi. Two, I don't think it was ever on their radar. I don't think it is for any parent that their child is going to do such a big thing. And then given that my parents were absolute atheists, this is like, you were an academic, and with that I was at the top of my field, as in it wasn't just like small fish academic, as in I led a network of 600 people who were much, much older than me, of professors that I was at the head of. So I had like this status that came with it, and I walked away from the whole thing, and they were like, I was the first one of my family to ever go to university. So they were extremely proud of that. And then, what is she doing? We've worked our entire lives to give these chances that we never got, and she's just turning her back on it. Plus, and I guess that might be a typical, I don't know if that's a typical Belgian thing, a typical village thing, a typical whatever thing, but what are people going to say about this? What is the community going to say
We've had
about
that
this?
Punjabi before, haven't we? You know.
Like the conversations I had with them is like, well, if you really want to do this, can't it be like invisible to the world then? As in, do it in the privacy of your own home, but why does it have to be so obvious? And why does it have to inform every choice you're making? And there was, a lot of, we do not understand why you're making these choices because they don't make sense. You're walking away from a really good job that people would do anything for. You're walking away from a comfortable country to a country where things aren't as easy, which is true. It was much easier in Belgium. You're walking away from the life you've built, all your friends. You're alienating anyone and everyone from yourself. Why? That was a complete... I think my grandparents would have probably understood better because they had faith themselves. But my parents, that wasn't at all. So the conversations were really difficult. And I would go back to Belgium. I tried to keep the connection with my parents. I would travel back. There's a good few times where I turned up at the door and the door was shut in my face, like, you're not welcome. And then with persistence, mum would let me in, but my dad would be so uncomfortable, and this is for various years, that when I would walk into a certain room, he would walk out. He couldn't sit across me. He couldn't face me. He didn't see his daughter anymore.
What kept you going in this time period of what kept you going Sikhi wise? Like
Sangat,
some people would give
Guru
up,
Sahib.
right? Yeah.
Just Maharaj's blessings. Maharaj kept me really, really close, even though not only did I have some challenges there, but also in those first years of coming into Sikhi and Sangat, I had to learn a hard way that it's not because someone wears a dastar and has a dari that they're trustworthy people, or that they might not be, insert any like swear word, basically. That was a hard lesson, and that wasn't one. I was very naive. I was very naive.
Everything was
coming into Sikhi.
tinted rose glass.
Of course, and
Everything's so nice.
everyone who looks like this, who has that roop, is going to be a saint. That was my understanding, or that was my naivety. That was absolutely not the case, and I got my lessons in the first years of that really, really quickly.
I think we all learned those lessons, and I think it's important that we reiterate that not everyone who's got a beard and turbans intentions are good. You know, they're not all saints or anything. They're just, some of them are just crooks, I guess.
Yeah, and if you
That's
look like
life.
this with a white face and all naive, like it's popping up on certain people's radars really, really quickly as well. Of course, so you're easy prey.
Yeah.
So that journey in the first years was hard.
Is
It
that
was
in
it was
U-
really hard.
in the UK?
It was
then?
in the UK.
UK,
Yeah, that was really hard. But I also had good sangat. And Maharaj, ultimately, you just go through the karma that you need to go through, right? As in, you can blame all kinds, but it's just your own karma that's to blame. I think I have a certain level-headedness alongside the naivety that would just keep me grounded as well, and just Maharaj could put on my head.
It's a bit of a silly question, Benji, but I think it's a really good question from somebody who lives in the world. In terms of where you were, and you asked the question yourself rhetorically, from having such a successful job, being at the top, it seems that life in terms of a worldly sense was all there.
Yeah.
Why did you give that all up then? Why did you give up all of that for this Sikhi?
For me, it couldn't go hand in hand. And the academic world, I don't think it's changed, but okay, I've not been part of it for over a decade. It's very much about ego, right? As in, it couldn't go hand in hand, no matter what field I was working in. Great literature, a bit less ego than in some other fields, but still, that's what everything is about. I hated networking events. In those years that I was in Sikhi and still working at university, I was also teaching yoga at university. As in, during the lunch breaks, I'd taken over that initial class. Backtracking to the beginning of the conversation, I'd taken over that initial class. That was the only bit about the day that I was really excited about. The rest of the work wasn't really interesting anymore. And I spend a lot of my time behind my computer
ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਬੈਲਜੀਅਮ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਕੈਥੋਲਿਕ ਲੜਕੀ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਬਰੇਸ ਕੀਤਾ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਕੌਲ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਪੂਰਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੋਈ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਅੱਛਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀ ਅਤੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਨੂੰ ਕਬੂਲ ਕੀਤਾ। ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਐਥੀਇਸਟ ਸੀ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਖੁਦਾ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨਦੇ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ। ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਲੜਕੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੈਲਜੀਅਮ ਦੀ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਖੁਦਾ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਇਹਨੇ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ PhD ਕੀਤੀ ਅਤੇ ਫਾਰਗ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਮੈਂ ਯੋਗਾ ਦੀ ਕਲਾਸ ਲੈਂਦੀ ਸੀ, ਅਤੇ ਯੋਗਾ ਦੀ ਕਲਾਸ ਮੈਂ ਇਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਲੈਂਦੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੀ ਕਮਰ 'ਚ ਦਰਦ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਅਤੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਉਹ ਕਮਰ ਦੀ ਦਰਦ ਨਹੀਂ ਹਟੀ। ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਦਾ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਤੂੰ ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਸਾਈਟ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰ, ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਕਰ, ਅਤੇ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੇਰੇ ਕਮਰ ਦੀ ਦਰਦ ਚਲੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੀ ਹੋਇਆ। ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਕਿ ਮੇਰਾ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਯਕੀਨ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ 'ਚ ਵੱਧ ਗਿਆ। ਹੁਣ ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਮਤਾਲਿਆ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ, ਅਤੇ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦਾ ਮਤਾਲਿਆ ਕੀਤਾ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਆਸਤਾ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੀ ਤਰਫ ਆਈ। ਫਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਮੈਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਹਰਿਮੰਦਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦਰਬਾਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਸਰ ਆਈ ਅਤੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਕਲੀਅਰ ਹੋਈਆਂ। ਉੱਥੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੁਛ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਵਾਈਬ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਮਿਲੀਆਂ, ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਕੁਛ ਤਰੰਗਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੀਆਂ ਜਿਹਦੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਧਰਮ ਹੈ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕਬੂਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ। ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਖਾਲੀ ਸੀ, ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਕੋਈ ਸਪਿਰਚੁਅਲਿਟੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਸੀ, ਕੋਈ ਰੂਹਾਨੀਅਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਅਕਸਰ ਸੋਚਦੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮਕਸਦ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ। ਫਿਰ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਹਿਸਤਾ ਆਹਿਸਤਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਰੱਬ 'ਤੇ ਯਕੀਨ ਬਣਿਆ, ਪਰਵਰਦਿਗਾਰ 'ਤੇ ਯਕੀਨ ਬਣਿਆ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਐਂਡ 'ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਫਾਲੋ ਕੀਤਾ, ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਕਬੂਲ ਕੀਤਾ। ਪੂਰੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਇਹ ਬਿਆਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ। ਅਕਸਰ ਲੋਕ ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਬੰਗਾਲੀ ਲੜਕੇ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਸੈਂਡ ਕੀਤੀ, ਅਪਲੋਡ ਕੀਤੀ, ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਦੀ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਈ। ਦੋਸਤੋ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬੋਲੀ ਨੂੰ। ਕਰਤਾਰਪੁਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਸੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਪਾਈ ਸੀ ਅਤੇ ਦੋਸਤ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬੋਲੀ ਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝ ਆਈ। ਬੋਲੀ ਦੀ ਸਮਝ ਆਉਣਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇੱਕ ਬੰਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਕ ਧਰਮ ਤੋਂ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਧਰਮ 'ਚ ਕਨਵਰਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲਾਤ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਮੱਦੇਨਜ਼ਰ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹ ਫੀਲਿੰਗ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਜਾਂ ਉਹ ਫੀਲਿੰਗ ਚੈੱਕ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਬੰਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਿਓ ਦਾਦੇ ਦੇ ਦੀਨ ਨੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਅਤੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਫਾਲੋ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲਾਤ ਜਾਂ ਕਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਤੰਗੀਆਂ ਆਈਆਂ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਹੁਣ ਆਹ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਦੋਸਤ ਕਹਿਣਗੇ ਕਿ ਯਾਰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਈ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਅਗਰ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਗੌਰ ਨਾਲ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ, ਗੌਰ ਨਾਲ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਕਲੀਅਰ ਕੱਟ ਸਮਝ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਐਂਡ 'ਤੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਫਾਲੋ ਕੀਤਾ ਅਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ 5 ਕਕਾਰ ਕਾੜਾ ਪਹਿਨਦੀ ਹਾਂ, ਕਛੇਰਾ, ਫਿਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਜੋ ਹੋਰ 3 ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੱਕੇ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਕਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਫਾਲੋ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹਾਂ। ਅਤੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਅਤੇ ਖ਼ਾਸ ਕਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਬੜੀ ਹੈਰਾਨਗੀ ਹੋਈ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਪਾਈ ਸੀ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਰਸੋਂ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਲੜਕੀ, ਉਹ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਫਿਲਮ ਸਟਾਰ ਬਾਲੀਵੁੱਡ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਲੜਕੀ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਜਾਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਮਤਾਲਿਆ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਤੇ ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਦਾ ਮਤਾਲਿਆ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ 'ਚ ਆਏ ਸੀ। ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਸਿਮਿਲਰਲੀ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਇਹ ਜੋ ਇੱਕ ਕੈਥੋਲਿਕ ਬੈਲਜੀਅਮ ਦੀ ਲੜਕੀ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਮੁਲਹਦ ਸੀ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖੁਦਾ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਅਤੇ ਜਾਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਹੀ ਮਤਾਲਿਆ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਲੜਕੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਇਹਨੇ ਫਾਲੋ ਕੀਤਾ, ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਕਬੂਲ ਕੀਤਾ। ਅਤੇ ਜਾਪ ਜੀ ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਅਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਸਾਰੇ ਰੱਬ ਦੀ ਵਡਿਆਈ ਹੈ, ਪਰਵਰਦਿਗਾਰ ਦੀ ਵਡਿਆਈ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਬੜਾ ਅੱਛਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਓਂਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ, ਉਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਟਰਾਂਸਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕੁਰਾਨ ਪਾਕ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਸੂਰਤ ਅਖਲਾਸ ਹੈ, ਕੁਲ ਹੂ ਅੱਲਾਹੁ ਅਹਦ, ਕਹਿ ਦੋ ਕਿ ਅੱਲਾ ਏਕ ਹੈ, ਅੱਲਾਹੁ ਸਮਦ, ਉਹਦੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਲਮ ਯਲਿਦ ਵਲਮ ਯੂਲਦ, ਉਹਦੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਸਿਮਿਲਰ ਇਹ ਲੜਕੀ ਵੀ ਜਪ ਜੀ ਅਤੇ ਮੂਲ ਮੰਤਰ ਦਾ ਮਤਾਲਿਆ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਸਲਾਮ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਆਈ। ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਈ ਹੋਣੀ। ਵੀਡੀਓ ਅਗਰ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਚੈਨਲ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰਿਆ ਜੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਨੈੱਟ ਦਾ ਖਰਚਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਕੈਮਰੇ ਦਾ ਖਰਚਾ ਅਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਅਖਰਾਜਾਤ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਅਗਰ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੂਰੀ ਦੇਖੋਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਦੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਤੋਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਚੈਨਲ ਗਰੋ ਕਰੇਗਾ, ਆਪਣੇ ਚੈਨਲ 'ਤੇ ਮਜ਼ੀਦ ਟਰੈਫਿਕ ਆਏਗੀ, ਆਪਣੇ ਚੈਨਲ 'ਤੇ ਮਜ਼ੀਦ ਵਿਊਜ਼ ਆਉਣਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਚੈਨਲ ਮਜ਼ੀਦ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬਰ ਗੇਨ ਕਰੇਗਾ। ਕੁਛ ਨਾ ਕੁਛ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੋਟੀਵੇਟ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰੋ। ਇੱਕ ਅੱਧਾ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਵਾਇਰਲ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਦੋਸਤੋ। ਕਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਅੱਛਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰਿਆ ਜੋ, ਨੈਗੇਟਿਵ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਤੋਂ ਪਰਹੇਜ਼ ਕਰਿਆ ਜੇ। ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ ਦੋਸਤੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਈ ਹੋਣੀ। ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਨਵੀਂ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਨਾਲ। ਆਪਣਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਕਰੋ, ਦੁਆਵਾਂ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਦੋਸਤ। ਅੱਲਾਹ ਨਿਗਹਿਬਾਨ।